Welcome to Grief Uprooted, a podcast dedicated to sharing your grief stories. Together, we embark on the mystery of one's grief journey as they learn to live, heal, and be courageous in a world rooted in trauma. Join myself, Christine, in an open discussion to help you uproot the grief in all our lives. I am an award winning author, professional speaker, and humanitarian in the field of grief and trauma. I want you to be part of the discussion. Today, I want to welcome Linda Henderson. Super excited to have her here. And as usual, I have not really heard her whole story. On Grief Uprooted, we love to look at it as an honor for someone to share their grief story with you. She's tuning in from Ontario, Canada, which is really great. So I'm excited to share the story with you. How Linda and I kind of met is it's interesting because I came across her book. And as usual, as I have said, she has no idea that I'm sharing this, but I thought her story was one that a lot of us could relate to. And just reading the reviews on Amazon also, it was so inspiring that people were sharing like how does somebody collect their mind to put these stories down in a book. So Linda, welcome. I had to have you on. I was like, I kind of want to go through all of this. I kind of let it out that you're in Ontario, Canada. I know right now that's a great place to be living. So no pun intended to all of you out there. Um, so do tell us where you're tuning in from.
Thanks for having me, Christine. It's my
Mm,
honor to talk about, I call it my love story.
mhm.
I'm living in Trenton, Ontario, which Trenton is the biggest air base in Canada. And the reason I'm here for many, many years now is my husband is retired military, still working contract, but retired military. So Trenton is not retirement, military community, a city, really, that town that's built up through the
Around
area.
that. So is
Yeah,
that where
around there.
Borden is? Is
No,
that
Borden is west of Toronto. We're east of Toronto.
okay? My father served also.
Oh,
He's a Royal Mechanical Engineer,
mm,
and so he was stationed in Borden for quite some time, working on tanks and things like that.
oh,
That's my other hat I wear. As everyone knows out there, that I lost my brother when I was 14, and my father decided that impacted our family so much that he ended up leaving his job and opening up his own company, now a corporation for over 30 years that I own and operate also. And it's on heavy duty truck parts because that's what he worked on in the military. Wow, I didn't know that about you. Um, so when so this is where you're based and that's where you're staying. And what I just kind of want to touch on that because I find it so interesting when you just meet people and you start talking. That alone, thinking about your husband in that field or career choice.
mm-hmm.
When we talk about your first experiences with grief, I kind of want to start there. Like, what was your first experience with grief? Because I think that would be traumatizing. I know my dad in the war or in the army. I know there wasn't a war at the time, but I was like, oh my goodness, what if, right? So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, well, being a nurse for 37 years, I had
mm,
encountered many situations around death and families, and but that was not personal.
right.
My first personal experience with grief was my mom.
Mm,
I was a single mom at the time, and she was just turned 61, and she died of cancer. And I
that's,
thought that was going to take me in. I thought
yeah,
this,
that's
this
young.
this is it. Like,
Yeah.
my mom and I were close, and as close as any mom daughter can be. And I thought then that I was going to die. Like, how am I ever going to deal with this, right? That was my first. And
And
then,
that connection with a mother and a daughter,
yes,
that
yes,
bond is
yeah.
so, like, I know myself, I have two daughters, but I know
Hmm.
my oldest right now is in her mid-20s getting married, and the bond just gets deeper and deeper and deeper.
Oh, it does. You don't, when your child is born, you don't think that you could ever love a little human as much as that particular day. But as time goes on, it's amazing how it just grows and grows and grows to just an endless, indescribable love,
Mhm.
right? Um, so I took about 2 weeks off work and went back to work. And it was, dealing with the grief was difficult, having to go into the bathroom because, my patient down in 260 down the hall reminds me of my mom. So, just have to go and have my grief burst and then go back to work again. And I didn't know anything about grief, really. I mean, not personally, you would
Wow.
deal with it, I guess, as a nurse, but at the end of the day, it's heartbreaking holding the hand of somebody that is passing on, or hugging and supporting family members. But and I remember going home and having tears and really being upset, but then you can sigh and say, oh, thank God that's not me, right?
Oh, wow. You say
So
so. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Keep going.
So I was just going to say, so, the nursing part and dealing with that, I was most of my nursing career was in the hospitals and then nursing homes as well, elderly people dying and I just it cannot ever prepare for what I went through. Like no matter what I dealt with, it could never prepare me for losing my daughter ever. Nothing.
Uh,
Nothing can prepare you,
no.
right?
I'm going to back you up a bit because this
Sure.
is the value of not knowing your story and allowing people to kind of witness what a conversation would be like. Because so many times people always say, I don't know what to say to the grieving. I don't know how to start the conversation.
Mm.
First off, I want to note that you have an angel behind you that keeps flashing on and off. And I just think it's so, it has a meaning and somebody is right next to
And
you.
do you know what? I have done many podcasts. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know the number by now. And I, always use the Zoom blur background. This has never happened.
Well, I
So
love it because I believe
it,
that's we're on the right path. Um, and I think one of my biggest focuses for Grief Uprooted is that we start talking about grief.
Mhm.
And as we were discussing earlier, I would like to do some supplement episodes that are talking about today's grief, um, and how people are handling it. Because you said so much when I said your first grief experience, just, the career choice. Holy
Mhm.
smokes, that's full of a lot of grief. A lot of grief.
Oh,
And
yes. Yes.
completely full of it. And they don't offer, we are starting to, but they don't offer grief education for yourself or grief support for the families. They're offering, I know with Roberts Press, we offer a lot of resources for nurses and people in the palliative care departments to hand out. But we've started to bring grief education in and grief help for nurses because this is something you're dealing with every day.
That's fabulous because I
And
mean, I'm aging myself, but back then
there was nothing,
there was nothing,
nothing.
nothing at all. So I think that is like
Yep.
terrific movement forward with grief.
Yes. And then
Absolutely.
and then when I hear you say your mom dies and you take 2 weeks off, this is my other big fight with all of this is in the labor laws. Um,
Oh,
and
yes.
yeah, running two corporations with a lot of employees, I'm always like, negotiate bereavement leave. And people are like, why? And I'm like, because when a loved one dies, you're going to get your 2 days off. You're lucky to get three, but you
It's
only get
three,
paid. Yeah, you're getting
three
paid.
days bereavement. That's my thing too, when I talk about society
Mhm.
and, dealing with grief. Like people just say, 3 days?
Yeah.
Really?
And
Like, are
that's
you kidding me?
Yep. And I'm so passionate about it because I think that has to change. And I think people need to realize when we're going in for jobs now,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, there's like 5 or 6 interviews. You have to do a video, you got to do an
Mhm.
online test. Well, I think
Wow.
as an employee, I have a right and I am a corporation boss, and I would love if an employee came in and said, I would like to negotiate bereavement leave. I have parents who might be dying. What if a child dies? And in mine, I'm like, you are paid for at least a week, and we will work with you and we will
Mhm.
try to figure this out. I know every person out there that's running a corporation right now hates me. I've had you verbalizely tell me in person that the corporation shouldn't have to pick it up. I agree, but I own a grief resource center and I believe I need to honor what I do.
Mm.
So it may not work for every corporation out there, but I just think that that's when it comes to society, we need to put some dollars there.
Oh,
That
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
that and then the second part of that is those things that are triggering you from work, like with your mom. That just
Yeah,
makes so much sense. And I hear so many times this happens to nurses, police officers, anybody. It happens to me in my industry.
for
And
sure.
that's where I think trying to work through that. Um, I commend you, man. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
And at the time, I was a single mom, and it was like, I've got bills to pay. There's nobody else. Like, it's me. So I did the 2 weeks. Of course, it, did me in for a while, but I did what I had to do, right? And even with that, I mean, what's 2 weeks, right? We all know that grief is lifelong.
Hmm. That's exactly it. It's an integration. People
Mhm.
often think it's something they're just going to get over or push aside. Um, and a lot of times I use a jar with a doll in it. I always use Annie and everyone, little kids think it's me, but I'm like, you can bottle it and function in society. And the way we have society structured, it's
Mhm.
cry for 3 days, bottle it up and keep moving. Um,
Absolutely. That.
and that's just too hard for an individual to do.
Mhm.
Um, so now your mom has died, single
Mhm.
mom, nurse,
Mhm.
and what happens next? Do we meet somebody new, or does your
Oh, well, at the time I had met uh, my second husband. We've been together for 30 years, but
okay?
I had just met my husband when my mom died, and we were together 6 months. So I always say he's an answer to prayer
Mm,
because it was after that that we joined together and blended our families and lived happily ever after till now, right? He was a great support system for me and there when I needed it, right? I mean, we actually met before she died when she was ill, and she lived in the same town as him in Trenton, and I was in Toronto at the time. But yeah, so the story goes on that God blessed me with a wonderful man and
mm.
great source of inspiration for me.
Oh,
And
and
we blended our family. We have 5 kids. We have 5 grown adult children, 4 here on earth and 1 in heaven, 10 grandchildren and
ah,
5 great grandchildren.
oh, that sounds so nice. So how many biological children do you have?
Two.
So you have a boy, girl. What are they?
2 girls. Yeah, 2 girls. Andrea, my daughter, who's in heaven, and her sister, Anissa, who's 6 years older. And those are my 2 biological daughters. And the
Oh,
other ones
wow.
are
Wow.
wonderful kids. They're mine as well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
always so great.
Mhm.
It's interesting that your soulmate or twin flame or your angel is in somewhat a similar career. I believe being a nurse is like going to war. I really do some
Well,
days.
that is true.
And I'm
That
not
is
a
true.
nurse,
Yeah,
but I've
yeah,
heard so many stories and I've been in so many educational workshops working with them going, wow. So
yeah.
I would hope
He's
that.
never been
Hmm.
overseas in the war situations, but he did spend 5 years in Germany, and he's a radar tech, so he ended up being a teacher teaching the radar systems.
Yeah.
Um, but
But you know what I think about that? Because I had a veteran that I was working with, and he was similar and similar to
Mhm,
my father.
mhm.
And it is that when we can deny something in society, it's kind of like people who aren't nurses or work in our industry. you don't have to think people are going to die. You don't have to think about that
Mm.
at all. You can think about what you're going to eat at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you don't have a reality check where
Yes.
your husband,
Hmm.
my father, yourself, myself in this industry, it's kind of like a reality check. Some people get desensitized to it, but it's like people can die, grief can happen. So for
Hmm.
them, it's like even though you didn't fight in a war, you're reminded it can happen. You're,
And that any time you can be required to go
yes.
and just uproot your family and go. Yes.
And my father it was, here's these tanks that are going out to kill and fight. Here's
Hmm.
your husband teaching these children, they are like children, but
Yeah.
young
Now they,
adults what to do. It's
yes.
this is a reality check that not everybody gets. The same as a
Hmm.
nurse. I'm going to walk in today and somebody may die. That's
Hmm.
something that, a lot of people don't. But then, not disregarding other people's careers because, walking in a corporation and knowing if you fail, the whole business goes down and everybody loses their job.
Hmm.
It is a similar grief. But it just wanted to point out that these are things that happen and we're dealing
Yeah.
with.
Hmm.
So now bring me to that day. Bring me to that day that brings you on Grief Uprooted and this amazing book you wrote.
My daughter, Andrea, she was 27 years old.
Mm,
She was in the prime of her life, I guess you could say. She had that big, beautiful, gorgeous wedding.
mm,
Limo came to the front door, in love, had a 2-year-old little boy, was pregnant with her second baby. They had just purchased a house in August, uh, before the accident was December 20th, 2011, and they purchased their house in August. So she wasn't in her new house very long to enjoy that. She was a social worker
mm.
and she was working with the youth of our community, some girls between the ages of 15 and 17. And she was a teacher for their literacy program, called
Wow.
New Directions. And so she was working with the girls, and they were out on December 20th, her and her co-worker, and she was a passenger in the front seat and her coworker was the driver. They were very excited because they had a couple of girls out in the community and they had raised money, and they had just called their boss and said, look at these girls, they're doing magnificent. They were on a high, and they were almost returned back to their place of employment about 3 blocks away. They were stopped waiting to turn left when a transport truck driver who was texting and driving, having an argument with his girlfriend, hit them, pushed them into the oncoming traffic, where they were hit yet again, T-boned. And Andrea, my daughter, and her coworker were killed instantly. That is the day that my life was shattered, and I had to rebuild from ground zero up.
Wow.
Mhm.
And I can't control my emotions, so, and I don't think I
And
should have
I don't,
to.
and the thing is,
Wow.
I tell the story, and sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. And the emotions are always there, as you know. The tears are in my heart. Just so happens today that the tears don't flow
Well,
visibly, right? But
I'll let mine flow for you.
yeah, thank
Um,
you.
because um, my Chelsea, hmm, she is of that age. She's 26. She's getting
Mm.
married this year.
Oh my,
And
that's
yeah, she just bought a house and I was out with my mother and my sister yesterday, or
oh
my
my
mother
goodness, so
and my
similar.
daughter yesterday, not my sister. My sister was working, but um and I think just watching you share your story, I can see your eyes welting. I can see you, and I know I have days where I can pull it together, and other days that my tears flow. But I think as a mom and a daughter, hearing your story, I feel how blessed I am and grateful that I still have them. But also, there's just so much to that. You lost a grandchild that you never met.
Mhm.
Um, and your daughter, and then on top of it the way it happened, how in-
Totally unavoidable. Totally.
infuriating.
Oh,
Like,
when it comes to grief, grief has many ugly faces, as we know. But
mhm,
the very first ugly face that I had to deal with was anger. Oh, the anger. Um, I never knew that I could be so raged. I didn't know. I had never experienced
Hmm.
anything like this before, but the anger was the dominant one.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
mean, I don't even know what the possibilities were for me at that time,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But just very angry. The court, um, the trial took 3 years before it settled,
Oh, my God.
and he walked away a free man.
Fuck
Yeah.
that. Mind my French. Fuck
I
that.
know, I know. I just like anybody that I speak to, like it's just unbelievable,
It's
really.
dumbfounding.
It's unreal. Um, I don't remember, it was a 5-day trial, and I don't remember a lot of the details because I was highly medicated. But um, my husband told me at the end of the day that there were papers missing. The prosecution had charged him with dangerous driving, which is criminal, and
Hmm.
because they wanted him to go to jail. But they forgot, or there were papers that weren't submitted, and from the prosecution. So when the judge gave his verdict, he said, I don't doubt that you caused the accident, but I can't find you criminally responsible. So he walked out that day, lit up his cigarette, and I'm imprisoned for life. Yeah,
Wow. Well,
I
you
know
gotta,
it's a hard one to swallow.
that's
It
a hard
really
one to
is.
swallow. I don't know how good I'd be at that.
I
Um,
wasn't very good, trust me.
yeah, I don't think I would be very good. Um, and I think, you want to say to yourself that that person will always carry that pain and burden.
Hmm.
But I have learned in my lifetime that there are people that don't even get it. So they just blame other people and they walk. It's kind of, I think they name them narcissistic people.
Hmm.
I'm not
Hmm.
a psychologist, so I'm not very good on the terms. Um, I think I would say just a very selfish individual,
Hmm.
self-focused individual, and they don't focus on the fact of the impact they had on other people. They just couldn't. So I don't
Hmm.
even feel good or consoled, I guess the word is, that maybe he's suffering knowing what he did.
Oh,
Um,
yes. It's, I think over the years, it's been 13 years. December 20th was 13 years. And in the beginning, it's like, I want him to suffer. There's all this hatred that just, I want this, I want
yeah, I'm
that, I want this,
feeling that right
right?
now.
And
I'm feeling
now,
that.
now it's like, what? Um, I have so much to do in life,
Mm,
and I need to channel my energy and my emotions and
nice.
my grief in a positive way, so I can't waste time with all of those things, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because even if he went to jail, it wouldn't matter. I still don't have Andrea. So I never, even in the beginning, I used to say that I didn't look to the judicial system for any kind of healing. I mean, maybe closure, however you want to describe it, but it doesn't matter. I still don't have Andrea. He could have been in jail for 10 years, and he comes out and here's me, 13. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. So however he suffers, whatever happens to him, um, I'm just going to be moving forward in a positive way.
You're resilient. You show such a great example of what resilience is.
We interrupt this podcast for a dirty moment. So my dirty moment is, I have many of them, but this one in particular is, I was out shopping one day and about to turn into the parking lot of the grocery store, and there was a car accident. And I had made my turn, went into the parking lot of the grocery store, and the ambulance was not the ambulance, the paramedics were there. And the nursing part of me, it was about a year into my grief, the nursing part of me wanted to jump in and help. So I did. And I went up to them and said, um, is there anything I can do to help you until the ambulance gets here, right? And they said, oh, the woman that needed attention was in the front seat passenger side. Didn't think about anything. Oh, can you just get in the back seat? And she's hurt her back. She's actually was going on her way to a chiropractor appointment, and now she got into an accident, more trauma to her back. So if you can just hold her neck so it doesn't move. So I said, okay, yeah, sure. So I helped out until further help came, and then I left and went back to my car. And then my day of trauma started to unfold. The anxiety happened, and I have asthma and I couldn't breathe, and they had to call an ambulance for me. And I ended up in the hospital for 24 hours with an asthma attack triggered by this accident, which sometimes triggers, we can see them happening, and sometimes, most of the time, they're creeping in the dark, around the corner, just ready to jump in. And that's what happened that day. I really had no, I couldn't help myself. So on that particular moment, on that day, I couldn't help myself. The trigger got the best of me, got the best of my physical health. But most times when triggers happen, the anxiety takes over, and I do my deep breathing and I shed my tears, sit in my car. I've done it a lot in a parking lot. It always seems to come when I'm out and about in society doing something, and I just go back in my car and I scream and yell, and I don't care who looks in and sees what's going on, but those feelings have to be expressed and the emotions have to be let out. And then I just, you're willing, you're ready to just take on the next chapter, so to speak.
A lot of times with
It doesn't
grief,
feel that way, but
I
I
know,
guess.
but you sure look it. Because I'm going through all the stages right now. At first, I'm like, okay, I'm pissed off, and then I'm like, okay, as she talks, she's right. Like, you know, and you have these beautiful grandchildren and children,
Mhm,
but to get yourself mentally and emotionally through it is so hard. And I think
it
that
is.
we've been, and I kind of want to go back to your career because as you're talking, I'm thinking about how many times I work with grieving people. And a lot of my job is working with communities when a trauma has happened. That's my specialty area.
Mm,
And a lot of people go after hospitals. So like they're like the
mhm.
nurses, the doctors did this, did this, did this when they want to place
Oh,
blame.
yes, yes.
So it sounds similar to me where, place it on, I can't say the word judicial system. And so when we look at it, that's a common thing that happens. And
Mhm.
I like how you were able to go, however this goes, I can't stay in this area because it's not going to do me any good. I need
Yes.
to move forward. And with Kubler-Ross, who came out with the stages of grief for the dying. I'm not
Mm,
sure your opinion on this. I've yet to meet someone who doesn't, who challenges me on it, but she came out for the dying. I know I repeat that every day. Um, we are
mhm,
living. And so when we look at the stages of grief, which I've compiled in and hoping to release a new book that interacts with this podcast, and those stages of grief are similar but different because we don't
mhm,
get to a point. I wouldn't believe how many people say, I finally get to a point of acceptance, but then I leave it again because we're not to accept, we're to be resilient.
mhm,
We are to learn, and it changes our perspective, changes who we are. We integrate it and we become resilient. And we
mhm,
show that strength to our grandchildren and to the generations coming. We
mhm,
don't
mhm.
just accept and fall.
No, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I can't say that I've ever sat here and said, I accept what happened. I
Mm,
don't think I ever will. What I've learned to do is accept peace into my life again
nice. I
and
like that.
accept that I have to live without her. I had no choice.
Yeah.
I wasn't given a choice. So I accept peace into my life. I accept that peace and move forward with love, because the love and bond that Andrea and I have is eternal and untouched by death. And that's my beacon,
Oh, I love
my
that.
road. Mhm.
So now I have some major question. How quick did you go back to work?
I didn't. I was 57 years old.
Hmm.
We had our plans, we were going to, work till 65, retire,
Hmm.
and we had our plans and goals. And I could not return to nursing. I couldn't return to work, period. But I could not return to nursing because at the time I was doing community nursing and I was going into people's homes, providing nursing care to people that required it. And so I couldn't go into Mr. Smith, let's say, and care about his infected toe because he's diabetic and do his dressing. Like, I know that sounds horrible, but I had no empathy left.
I get,
I was stripped of
I get
everything,
that.
right? So there was no returning to that. And then, even a couple of years later, I would say, I can't even be a Walmart greeter because I'm not going to go and ask someone, how's your day? I don't give a shit about your day, right? Sorry, right? And
I love it.
that's the anger still in me. Like I still have that little flicker of anger, and it doesn't take very much, trust me, to get it ignited. So
Uh,
I didn't return to work.
I love your honesty because I have this where I I had this old phrase that was told to me. I never understood it as a kid. I just thought it was some crazy old person telling me something. So I was in deployment where so I was deployed to 9/11, September 11th, Ground Zero, the Pentagon. And then after that, I worked with the Friendship Ambassadors of the United Nations and Lions Internationals, and they developed grief camps. So I was hired to run and develop grief camps for youth. So these children came from world tragedies. So some children were from New Orleans, and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
they anytime a world tragedy happened, um, I would work in these camps, and that what was happening for a period of
mm-hmm.
time. And one of my mentors, uh, I just remember he said, first off, love the blue suit, but you're going to need a pair of sneakers. 100% right. I went into that training session with sneakers on. And then another mentor, she says, I just need to prepare you for something. And I said, what? And, she goes, when you go home, you're going to go outside and you're going to mow your lawn. And I giggled and I said, with a beer in my hand. And she goes, yeah. She goes, you're going to start mowing your lawn. And as you start mowing your lawn, your head's going to come up and you're going to look around and realize no one gives a shit. They don't even know what you've been through. They're
No,
mowing their lawn, they're living their life.
no
And I
idea.
was like, I got home
Mm-hmm.
and I started mowing the lawn and it hit me. And I looked down and it was like I could see every blade of grass. And I remember hearing the lawnmower. I remember looking at all my neighbors on this sunny day, and it was like everything slowed down and went slow. And I went,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh my goodness, these people, they've
Mm-hmm.
tuned out to this."
Yeah, it's like they have no idea.
Yeah. And
No
it
other way
brought
to
me
say
back.
it. Right?
Yeah. And it brought me back to, and that's why I believe when it comes to healing with grief and when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to how do we become resilient and make it through by joining together with other people who are grieving. But you can't explain this. You just can't.
Well, yeah, that's what I always say. You need support, and you need to be with like-minded individuals,
Yeah.
people that can understand. And in that first year, there were no Zooms, and I connected with a support group, and it was
Mhm.
just a small support group. I'm sure there were lots more mothers out there than six
Yeah. Yeah.
that could be part of this group, but I joined up with this group, and it was, in the beginning, I went and I wasn't ready for it.
Mhm.
6 months after, I walked in, and everybody's kind of getting settled and they're talking and chatting and laughing. And I'm like, oh, I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Oh, they're mothers that have lost their children. How can they be laughing? And so I didn't return for about another year. And it became my lifeline.
Yeah.
It just became my lifeline. I could go there and just to be with people that understood, but it has to be the right time. You have to
Yeah.
be ready for it, right? And like
And
I
not
was,
to get discouraged when you go and go,
mhm.
okay, this isn't the right time for me. You just
And
have
I
to
didn't
back up.
have anyone to tell me, no, it's okay. Like, it's okay to laugh. Like, I didn't know a lot about grief personally,
Yeah.
right? All I knew was the devastation that I was living inside of me, and to smile or laugh was not really something allowed
Yeah.
at
That's so,
that time. At
yeah,
that time,
that's so
right?
true.
But
And
it is
it's,
important to be around people that understand, so you
yeah.
can feel understood, be seen and heard.
Yeah. And I find that even in my career, when someone's like, so what are you doing for dinner? And I have a sarcastic remark and I'm like, well, if I'm alive, I'll eat. And then they just kind of, oh, you're in a bad mood. And I'm like, I am in a bad mood, you know.
No.
I spend my day doing this type of stuff. And when you're packing up, it's similar to that military thing we were talking about. When you're packing up, a box of the most important picture, which is how to take a picture of your loved one after they've died,
Hmm.
it clicks in my head. And I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm packing up. This is what I'm sending out. So
Yeah.
you're just like, I don't worry about that until I'm there.
Hmm.
And it could change throughout the day. It might be something I'm looking forward to, but yeah, I don't, if I was a Walmart greeter, oh my goodness, that would be bad. I
No.
would, that's such a
There
good
was a
one.
time when I could be patient,
Yeah,
like when
no.
I did have the patience and understanding, to communicate and talk to people and care about somebody's day, but no.
You know what, though? I so would love to set up a camera. I did this. I was teaching a course at a university, and I asked the kids to there was a book called After Suicide. And the course was on society's perspective of suicide. And I said, just do something to see how society reacts. And this student called me and she was at our local mall and she put the book next to her on a bench to see how people would react. And they sent an ambulance people to her. And they started asking questions and and then she was like, my professor told me. And I said, you know what? You're getting an A. This is great. So, and I go, what? And she's like, it says after suicide, it's to help people. It's to help the grieving.
There
And
you go, eh?
it was such a but I would love to do the same as a Walmart greeter. And I did something when I was out. Do you know how people go, how are you? I
Hmm.
switched it up and I did it as an example for these students. And I went, I'm horrible today. And some were scan your groceries and go, that's nice. Others, this one girl, she floored me. She goes, really? And I said, yeah, my grandma just died and full on started crying. And she was this young girl. And I was like, why are you at work, honey? And she's like, they're looking for someone to fill in right now. And I remember just standing there and going, it's going to be okay. It really is. And I just thought, imagine as a Walmart greeter, if someone came in and you were capable of saying, you know, how are
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
and
and
say
that
something.
happened, right? Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
a little off color. But anyways, this is going to be a long episode, but I love the conversation. So, take me to now you've gone through this whole experience. What brought on wanting to put a collection of stories together and kind of how did you go about writing this book? Because it's not a short book. Um,
No,
so
no. Um, one of the tools that I had adapted, learned over the years, in my grieving was walking. At first it's just getting out the front door. At first it's appreciating the blue sky and that sun that's shining and then going back to bed. But then um, eventually, and even now I haven't been walking too much with the snow, but I like to walk for about 45 minutes briskly. And I was out one day 9 years into my grief. And, I had mentioned before to my husband, one day I'm going to write a book. We always say things like that. And I came home and I said, that's it. I am going to write a book. I have no idea how, because I knew nothing about computers, because aging myself with my nursing, all our notes and progress notes and everything was all handwritten except for the last couple of years.
Mm.
So I'm like, computer world is not something I'm really familiar with. So my husband said, okay, well, you just turn on the computer and you pull up, Word and you start typing. So that's what I did. And it took me 2 years, but it was day after day of reliving. I forced myself, pulled myself back into those deep, dark moments, into that horrific day. I wanted to feel and express and describe every emotion and feeling um, accurately to someone who's reading, right? So my husband would come home some days. I'd be in my PJs all day. He'd come home at lunch. He always comes home for lunch. And, I'd be there writing. At supper time, I'd still be in my PJs. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to bed. And it was pretty difficult. But at the end of the day, when it was published, it's like this new mission. I started connecting with I started doing podcasts. I started connecting with grief groups on Zoom, making friends. It was like I started grieving the way that I should have been grieving. And then I just have this new purpose now to reach out, inspire, empower, and just tell people that, you know what? This is what I've been through. You can do this. You can do it. It is possible.
That's so inspiring. So we're going
Mhm.
to just take a small break because I want to come
Okay.
back and just totally dive into this book. We'll be right back. Today's episode was sponsored by robertspress.com. You can visit us online. I'm going to say it one more time, robertspress.com. We distribute over 500 different resources. This includes ceramics, books, healing products, journals, pens, mugs, anything you can think of. Because that good cup of tea, I got to talk about a mug for a second. Good cup of tea and a journal and a pen and a good friend is sometimes what you need when you're grieving. So I just wanted to let you know that if you jump online to robertspress.com, if you want to send a gift to somebody, such as our empathy teddy bear, or you wanted to send a journal and a pen and two mugs because maybe you're going to go visit and have that cup of tea with them, it's a great way to just reach out to somebody when you really don't have the words. You're really unsure what to say. I think sometimes people are hesitant and they think, well, I don't want to send a heavy read to somebody. So sending something that offers them to write out their thoughts and their grief journey down in a journal and perhaps a little pen to go with it that has that inspiring thought. Um, it's always the best way to go. So we do have a lot of orders coming in right now that are for friends and family who are grieving. And I love that because we can add your little note and personalize it for you and send it out on your behalf to your loved ones or friends. So visit robertspress.com and yeah, check us out. Take care, everybody. Okay, so let's dive in to the road of love and hope, the journey of child loss. So, share the book with me. Like, what are some of the chapters that are
Okay.
in it? What would I gain from reading the book, ordering the book? Um, as somebody who's grieving, is it depicting your stories? What is it really?
Well, when I sat down to write it, I wanted to make it relatable. I wanted it to be like I was like I was sitting here talking to a person who had just lost their child or their loved one.
Hmm.
Because in that first 6 months to a year, I was born and raised in a Christian home, and I know that Andrea is in heaven, but it's like I really needed um, confirmation. So I read as many books about near death experiences as I could get my hands on. I
Yeah,
just wanted to hear all about heaven and
yeah.
people, what they had experienced. And there was one book, though, that I read, and it was it was written by a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And I thought, no problem, Linda, you can understand all that medical jargon, right? So I started reading it and I'm like, oh my God, my grief brain, I can't do this. I cannot understand these. Like, I just it wasn't relatable. I
Yeah.
could not relate to it at that time. And so when I wrote my book, I thought, no, I want it to be like clear, precise, simple. This is this is what grief is. You will experience depression,
Yeah.
um, anxiety, anger, fears, all of those things. So I touch on all those subjects pertaining to my life experiences, how I've experienced them. Um, and then I, talk about how grief affects families, what it did to my family,
Mhm.
and, how that all came about. And then I talk about society and people dealing with grief, the things to say and the things not to say, and how I honored her, what honor, like how important honor is. And moving forward, this is how we heal and all the things we did to honor Andrea, and just reiterated that gr grief, what you're feeling is normal.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, I'm losing my mind.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with my brain. I can't remember where I put anything.
Yeah.
Grief is a whole body experience. So I pretty much go through all of that in the book. And the road of love and hope, I wanted the the cover to be a road where
Mhm.
it's all
Yeah.
rocks and there's no the road, you can't see where the road is going because you don't know where you're
You have
going,
no idea. Yeah.
and it's rocky and it's harsh,
Yeah.
and but at the end of not at the end of the road, but if you look ahead you can see those dark clouds, but
Yeah.
behind those dark clouds the rays of sun are shining through, so the sun will shine. And
Nice.
that's the message I wanted to give with the cover. And so the whole book is about the road of grief. The first
Yeah.
chapter is the big boulder.
Yeah.
That's when it all happened, and then the pathway of perseverance. And
Love
for
it.
every chapter has a little quotation. And then at the end of the chapters, I put my little thought for today. So it was just for today. And after reading that chapter, this is what you need to do. I will let my endless tears flow, and I
Nice.
will accept that my tears are love. Things like that at the end of each chapter.
Which is so nice because, I think a lot of times people will say, do I have the background to write a book on grief? Like the imposter syndrome. And I started in grief. I have no degree. I am not a master's, or I'm a certified trauma service specialist. I'm certified in bereavement, trauma, and things like that. But I do not have this massive educational background in grief. And I
Mm-hmm,
often say to people, grief is an experienced,
mm-hmm,
it's a sorrowful experience
mm-hmm,
that is really hard to articulate if you have not experienced it. And I
mm-hmm,
believe your nursing background gives
mm-hmm.
you such a leeway towards that and a relatability, because of just dealing with humans and
Yeah,
this experience. And I know that it sounds like a really raw book, as if you're going to read that chapter, but then I'm also
I've
reaching out
I've
to
had
you.
people tell me that they've had to read it slowly.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and it's because I wanted to put information in there about grief, just to know that, like, if I had someone to tell me it's okay to feel depressed,
Yeah.
I still suffer with depression, and that grief is lifelong, and some of these effects of trauma are lifelong.
Hmm.
So I do have lifelong depression. I do have lifelong anxiety. None of those
Yeah.
things existed in my life. I mean,
Yeah.
I did not have mental health issues prior to this, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted people to know that it's normal to
Yeah.
expect that. You're not going crazy, like I said, right? And it's just written from a broken-hearted mama's
Yeah.
perspective, right?
Yeah. And your mom died too young. So
Yes.
you're
Oh, yeah,
really daughter
absolutely.
loss, mother loss,
Mhm. My
there.
father passed away 4 years ago on Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
but I mean, he was 88. I loved him dearly. I was his caregiver. I, watched over him and
Mhm.
his dementia and keeping him safe for 4 to 5 years prior to that, right? And, so I had the experience of losing my dad, but um, it's on a different level completely. You know,
Yeah.
he was, I just look at, I mean, of course, grief is
Yep.
grief, and no, you never want to see anyone that you love, especially your parent,
Yep.
die,
Yep.
but he was blessed.
Yeah.
He watched his family grow, he watched his grandchildren grow. I even have a picture, a 5 generation picture with him,
Yeah.
right? So that's a blessing. So I always say, you know what? I never thought I would live one day without my Andrea. I didn't want to live, I wanted to die.
Yeah.
But I am so blessed because I have had so many blessings over the last 13 years. I just had my fifth great grandchild, who's 2 weeks old, born. And my granddaughter lives with me. So I get to enjoy him every day.
That's so nice. That's so
And
nice.
I
Yeah.
mean, I've also had, suicidal ideation. I was thinking, that one particular day, if I had
Yep.
really carried through with my thoughts, I would have missed out on so much in life, right?
I love your openness because people don't realize that a lot of mental illnesses, not saying that you have one, but in Canada, the first year of grieving is exactly that. There's really no help for you. Counselors, there are grief counselors coming out. There's death doulas coming out, which I love all this stuff that's coming out. I do short-term counseling, which is like 12 weeks working with people,
Hmm.
but they really don't have anybody for the first year of grieving. And it's really after a year of grieving, that's when mental health steps in and says, okay, now it's considered you might have a disorder or something happening, prolonged
Hmm.
grief, things like this. Where I think if we can really, in that first year, offer the support, offer the resources that are available, and if we
Hmm.
were all more educated and open and talking about it,
Oh, for sure.
I think it would bring that person a little bit closer to where they should be because majority of the places I work with mental health issues or I'm called in to help, there's always grief as the underlining thing.
Hmm.
Somebody has either died, they have lost both parents, either to a divorce or been, no one's talking to each other. So there's so
Hmm.
many forms of grief. And
Hmm.
that was
Absolutely.
what that person was experiencing, but that they were nuts, that they were crazy, that they were to
Yeah.
blame, and they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get past that. And
Yes.
then it always turns down, even food addictions, all of it
Yeah.
all goes
Yeah.
back to. So I love that,
Mm-hmm.
your honesty in saying, like, this is where I'm at, this is what was happening. I want to go into some of your reviews because I love this. This one is actually January 14, 2024. This is on Amazon, and I'm sorry to put you on on the spot, but I'll tell you right now, they're all 5 stars. But I'm going to pick just a few. It's hard to put into words what truly is between the covers of this book. How a mom losing a child can write with so much compassion and empathy is nothing short of remarkable. Linda, we hear you. I love how she's supporting you. We see others like you that have
Now
children
I'm
ripped. I know, now you're going. Children ripped from their lives. You give us a perspective of the agony, but also the steps and directions to help us understand ourselves and take our journey to recover and acceptance. This book should be in every grief book, a must read to healing. Thank you. You know what I love the most about that review and why I chose that one?
Mhm.
Because she is reaching out to love you back. And
Yes.
now I'm going to make
Yeah.
myself cry, Jesus.
Yeah.
God. But I love how grieving people do that. Grieving
Mhm.
people, they have this ability to reach back at you. So when we write a book like this, I
Mhm.
too, as an author, and kept writing, so I encourage you to keep writing.
Oh,
Um,
I'm working on my second
but
book.
yeah, see, it's so rewarding because they are offering you back that healing you provided in your book.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
really loved how she did that. I really do. This one
Thank you
I
for
picked.
reading that. Wow.
Oh, you're welcome. I will. I just thought it was interesting when I was looking at them because this person actually puts a picture of your book. So they got your book, took a photo of it, and put it online. So I thought they must really like their book. This is a true account of the grieving process and healing from the loss of a child. It is an honest read and allows the reader to feel and understand the healing process. Again, you're not alone. Thank you, Linda, for sharing your experiences. This will be a great benefit for any child loss circumstance.
Oh,
Um, and I just, again, that person is reaching back out to you. And I just
hmm
think these are such a testimony to you were helping them. And it's very much a childlike act in the sense
hmm
that when I did September 11th and we did Where's Robert, children wrote to me, but they always asked how Chrissy was. And my first
Um,
book is about Chrissy losing her brother. And
uh,
they would say, Chrissy, don't worry. And it's so great to see adults doing this. And it means
hmm
you touch them, right? So I'm just
hmm
going to read one more because beautifully written, the words flow. It is hard to put down. Tearful but enlightening to read from someone who has personal experience. Great read and highly recommends the book.
Wow.
Um, so I just,
Heartwarming. It's heartwarming.
it
Right.
is.
It is
And
really heartwarming, especially, considering that when I sat down, it's like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just pouring everything, all my pain. I'm going to put it into purpose, and that's what I've done, right? But I had no idea where it was going, what was happening, but I just wanted to help even just one person because I have so much that if I just help one person, but it's been more than that, so it's
yeah,
heartwarming.
yeah. And how does it feel to, well, I can tell on your face, but how does it feel to know that people will publicly say, hey, this is good and I support this?
It's it feels hard. It just makes me want to reach out and do more.
Hmm.
I want, I guess that's part of the nurturing nursing in me that's never really left. I want to help people. I know how painful it is and how, to be suffering like that. And if, to pick up a book and know that someone else has survived, know that someone else is now thriving. Um, that makes me feel amazing.
That's awesome. That's so
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. I just think that your story is so inspiring, and I think it will impact so many. And love to have you come back too and dive in a little bit more and learn about this new book that you're working on. But I want to thank you all out there. But before we go, I'm going to let you know that The Road of Love and Hope, The Journey of Child Loss, you can check it out on Amazon.com and .ca, I noticed. And we're also going to have it at robertspress.com that you can order the book directly from us. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm pretty sure if you want an autographed book, we could swing it too. I'm
Oh,
hoping.
yes, I have lots. I also just want to add that
Yes.
just a little tidbit of honor that I have done for my daughter. When she wanted to be a journalist, interesting
Oh,
enough, she wanted to be a journalist and she went into the journalism program and it wasn't quite what she expected, but she loved writing. She wrote for her local high school. In those days we had newspapers and
yes. I love
kids
those things.
wrote about what's going on at Bayside
Yeah.
High School this week, right? And she was the writer for that, right? But in high school, one of her projects was to write a children's book.
Mm.
And she wrote her children's book. It's called Spooky Meets a Friend, and that's available on Amazon. And she's an author.
Oh, well, we heard that we got to Google this. So it's called Spooky. What is it again? Say it
It's
again.
about a little black cat.
Uh-huh. You cut out. Wait till you come back. 1 second.
And a little doggy and has to learn how to.
Okay, now you have to start again because it cut out. So what's the book about? The spooky book.
Okay. It's called Spooky Meets a Friend. It's about a little black cat that learns how to share. And Spooky, there's a little dog that comes into the home. And so, it's just for kids between the ages of 2 and 6, talking about emotions and anger and jealousy and, just a short little book. But she wrote it and I published it for her.
Oh, I love that. And so
Mhm.
what's her name, her full name that you published
Her
that?
name, so you either search Spooky Meets a Friend or Andrea Watkins.
Well, Andrea.
Watkins. Yeah,
Oh,
Watkins.
I love it. I'm going to put
Yeah.
all this in the notes of the podcast too. So don't worry, it'll all be there.
Okay. I
But
almost forgot to mention that, but it's pretty
oh,
special to
that's
me.
great. And I'm telling our listeners that this will all be there, your email. Do you have a website or anything?
I did have a website, but yeah, there was problems, and now I'm trying to create another one all by myself, and I know nothing about it, but it's going to happen.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I can't tell you enough how great this has been. I know our conversation went a little longer, but it was just so nice to dive in and have this conversation.
Yeah.
So until next time, just remember it is only together that we grieve and it is only together that we heal. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Grief Uprooted professional grief and empowerment coaching are not to be used as a substitute for professional advice by legal, medical, financial, business, spiritual, or other qualified professionals. All our products and services are designed for grief empowerment through learning and sharing of one's lived experiences.